Thank you so much, Dr. Alam, for these very inspiring words. Next one, I want to call on Justin Daduya to share.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening or whatever time it is, wherever you are. So, I am Justin. I specifically contributed to the introduction, and so I guess I want to talk about that and to talk about more the general process by which we came up with this introduction. Since I came to it quite late, right? I was brought on to the project by Caroline, specifically because we didn't want to write an introduction that just set up the stage for the articles. Aside from talking about the excellent articles that our fellow authors here today have been talking about and have written in the special issue, we also wanted to do two things, right? We wanted, in the first place, to be able to answer some of the misgivings that anti-decolonial scholars have charged decolonial scholarship of, and second, to chart a path forward for what is decolonial scholarship doing wrong or doing insufficiently right now, and what it must be like moving forward, right? And so we specifically wrote the introduction with an article in mind, as you may know, of course, from Third World Quarterly, the famous or infamous article, The Case for Colonialism, right? We wanted to respond to that because it charged decolonial scholarship with three failures. Gilly says that we failed in three ways. We failed, he says, first, to provide an objective analysis of the net costs and benefits of colonialism. Second, that we minimized the extent to which the colonized consented to being colonized. And third, overall, his broadest and deepest indictment of what we're doing, something that both Feroz and Fatima talked about a bit earlier, the notion that because we are slanted towards the colonized, because we are dismantling power structures, we're supposedly unscientific, we're lacking objectivity, we are irrational because we allow ourselves to recognize the imbalances of power that have undergirded how society has unfolded for so long. And because of this, because we've associated ourselves with these concrete decolonial movements, anti-colonial movements, that our scholarship is invalid, is inaccurate, and that it should be dismissed. I won't go into the things of responding to one and two. It was a matter of a lot of scholarship and, dealing with individual arguments. I wanted to focus on three, on this notion that because we're political, because we have a clear view of the power structures that arise in decolonial scholarship, that we are somehow unscientific. So, to share, I just want to begin by looking at where this critique comes from. Second, responding to it, right? The impossibility of objective or value-free critique in the wake of colonial violence. And finally, what it means to reorient our scholarship towards real political understanding of dismantling colonial power structures. So, as mentioned earlier, this misgiving with regards to political or decolonial scholarship comes from the long-held value-free ideal in the sciences and in social science in particular. They think that for scholarship to be worthy of academic recognition, it should be objective. That it shouldn't be tainted, quote unquote, by our biases, by political agendas, by real world critiques. They posit the existence of a researcher that is divorced from his material conditions, that is perfectly impervious to the tug of his moral conscience, and they suppose that anyone that doesn't meet the standard, that doesn't meet the Cartesian understanding of the ego divorced from the body, or the, the that doesn't fit this standard of the perfect objective researcher, is doing a disservice to the creation of knowledge, right? We understand where this comes from. It comes from the Enlightenment ideal, moving past, um, you know, systems of knowledge that depended on authority, whether that be from the church or from the state. But in doing this, in attempting to free the self from dogma, it turned the self into dogma as well. It's supposed that the self could freely understand that which is in front of him, divorced from his conditions, when, in truth, As a lot of the scholars here, I suppose, would say, we know that our understanding of the world has been deeply conditioned by how we've been taught and how um, literally we have been given the lenses to see everything around us. As a young student from the Philippines, I know this well. I was raised in the shadow of the American Empire, literally in an area which used to be a US naval base here in the Philippines, right? When it was still the American colonial period. I was raised in a family that all worked for the Americans when the naval base was still here and continue to have relatives in the US Navy as part of how they integrated Filipino families into, the colonial project, right? Literally the colonial war machine. And so I understand well how I grew up thinking that they were the good guys, that they were the ones that gave my family this break away from poverty. And growing up, the Philippine education system as well ingrains this very deeply, right? We celebrate Philippine American Friendship Day. We celebrate their holidays. We do all of these things because precisely our knowledge is political, right? And of course, I don't want to belabor this point because a lot of the people here are already decolonial scholars well aware of this truth. But this this recognition of the politicality, or rather this desire not to recognize it, has stifled for so long um our understanding of reality. As we point out here, now, does the political nature of the colonial critique invalidate it as a scientific endeavor? No, we contend because knowledge is inherently political, and because the ability to actually contribute to changing an unjust world is the point of the colonial critique. As I write in this paper, Gilly fusses about the political nature of counter narratives like decolonization because his own views, which are just as political, have been hegemonic for long enough to claim universality. Specifically, he portrays scholarship in support of sovereignty of people as political and ideological, while portraying views that support foreign domination of countries as objective and apolitical. If he wants to talk about the intellectual history of anti-colonial scholarship, he should be ready to examine the political origins of his own colonial scholarship as well. The social sciences as we know them today were born within the context of the age of empire, funded by colonial plunder and used to legitimize the colonial enterprise. Killy also holds up an antiquated view of the sciences that is dangerous. He expects us to be value free. But how can you take your humanity as a researcher out of the equation when you read about the colonial killing fields, the eradication of cultures, and the general inhumanity of colonialism and neocolonialism? In the present, when you try to study critical peace studies, and as Fatima said earlier about, doing it in the age of Trump, right? How do you do this scholarship objectively when you're seeing how Trump is, carpet bombing all of these places and how US arms are being used to kill children in Gaza? How do I become objective as a scholar when I know that American arms, that the American war machine is arming our military, which killed my own friend just a few days ago in the Taboso massacre, right? It was a young researcher from the University of the Philippines who was killed, no, summarily for studying with farmers. How do I become objective in that? And more importantly, why should I be objective when I know that I am in the face of colonial violence? So it's finally, right? If objective scholars, objective in air quotes, in the strongest air quotes I can muster, can stomach being value free in the face of injustice like this, we apologize. We simply cannot be objective in this instance. Finally, he fails to see the importance of the colonial critique as a matter of counterbalancing. No, for so long, colonial voices have been centered in the discourse. It's only fair that we resist their hegemony and create spaces for marginalized voices. I understand why he thinks that, and why other anti-decolonial scholars think that this is dangerous, that this is unjust against them. Because, when someone is accustomed to privilege, as they say, equality feels like oppression. Most importantly, what objective scholars like Gilly fail to understand is that decolonial scholarship's association with actual social causes is not an indictment of its quality. This is something that we really wanted to emphasize here because so often it's easy to brush off the decolonial scholarship as nothing more than an extension of real political movements, right? As nothing more than a propaganda tool parroting their understandings of things. But in truth, its allyship with these real social movements is the fulfillment of its purpose. If the colonial critique does not serve to decolonize beyond the academe, that is, to upend the coloniality of power that keeps the global north in power at the expense of an impoverished global south, then there's no use for it, right? What's the use of terms in Filipino like oh, kapwa and loob when my kapwa is starving because of imperialist plunder, right? What use is theorizing from all of these indigenous terms, from the colonial difference or whatever we may use, if our scholarship leads to no difference in the conditions of the actual people living their lives and dying their deaths in the global south. Um, Again, ultimately to read from the to the introduction. While Gilly can lament this allegiance to the global south all he wants, one thing must be clear to all who attempt decolonial critique. Partisan scholarship that strives for social justice for the global majority is not our deepest failure. It is our greatest strength. It is this partisan scholarship of the global majority that must ground decolonial thinking, preventing it from confining itself to the hallowed halls of the academe in keeping with the colonial scholarship that it seeks to critique. It is this allegiance to the actual struggle against the coloniality of power that ought to orient our basic questions and methods, making sure that decolonial scholarship remains in service of the people whose narratives it claims to uphold. Our scholarship's association with radical social transformation is not, as Gilly claims, something that ought to be deemed our worst failure. It is the possibility of real change for the global south that makes decolonial scholarship worth doing in the first place, right? It is this recognition of this possibility that changes how we do work when we are doing decolonial projects. It's what changes the questions that we ask. It's why, when we do critical peace studies, we don't just ask how do we silence these dissenters and prevent them from doing conflict, but what are the roots of the conflict in the first place. It's why when we look at education, we don't just say that okay, these are the most effective pedagogical tools for meeting the demands of the neoliberal system. It's why is the neoliberal system, the capitalist mode of education, the default system in the first place, right? This is what changes when we think about frameworks. This is why we contest, right? The frameworks of the West when it comes to modernization, when we ask what it means to be modern in the first place. This is what asks us to reorient our methods, that asks us to go to the countryside to actually live with the communities that we try to study rather than relying on that which is official. This is what changes our analysis. It's what asks us to revisit um, our understanding of the phenomena that we see, our attempt to enlarge our thinking to understand it from the perspective of the oppressed, right? And ultimately, this is what asks us to reorient our praxis, to re-examine whether our scholarship is actually going towards informing social movements and informing society at large. This basic recognition that decolonial scholarship isn't just about decolonizing the mind, but serving the colonized, serving the remnants of the age of colonialism, and serving the people ultimately that that seek to be free from the shackles of the structures of oppression that we are all subject to, that makes decolonial scholarship the future, or something at least that we ought to fight for, right? And this is also why we wanted to frame this introduction, this beautiful special issue, with this understanding in mind. um because what use is compiling all of these wonderful instances of decolonial scholarship if it's not with the clear goal of going beyond the academe, of as Fatima says, right, escaping the master's house and forging our own, right, building our own house, a house where the children of Gaza do not fear bombs, a house where researchers from the Philippines are not afraid that they will be summarily executed, a house where the toiling masses in the global majority um are no longer subject to imperial plunder, but rather are able to live their lives, right? In pursuit of of the good life, of the good south, of the good life from the global south, right? So um I really look forward to hearing more, because as we talk about this more, right, we refine these ideas of moving forward and bringing it to the people. And so I thank again Caroline and everyone involved in the special issue for this opportunity, right, to talk more about this, because I'm sure the struggles here in the Philippines are very similar, no, to the struggles that everyone else here in this conference call is facing, and that I'm sure that we can struggle together and arrive at victory together through our decolonial scholarship and our decolonial praxis. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Justin, for this. So in a second, I will call on all panelists to briefly respond to one another, and if they want to also share ideas of how do we dismantle these power structures. I forgot earlier. I should briefly talk about the history of this special issue. So we were actually invited by Third World Quarterly to do this special issue, and in 2017. Really problematic, nasty article by Bruce Gilley, who advocated for recolonization, who unfairly attacked decolonial scholarship, was published. And the backstory apparently is, as I understood, that the founding editor of Third World Quarterly, Shahid Kadir, who was born in Pakistan but lived most of his life in the UK, um, wanted to publish this article, even though it was previously rejected from some peer reviewers as an opinion piece, because he didn't want people to feel that he's stifling all debates and uh, kicking out or blocking all different viewpoints. So that's apparently the reason why he published this, even though Shahid Kadir himself is the heart of Third World Quarterly and is a very pro-global South, anti-colonial, decolonization kind of person. But of course, the article itself is so problematic and deeply flawed. It miscites its sources, it builds strawman, it mobilizes very unfair arguments. That there was really an outcry about the article. So we debated: should we continue with the special issue? Should we move to another journal? What should we do? And some people left the special issue because of this. And in the end, the conclusion that we uh, gained altogether is that we will move forward with a special issue, but we will write in the introduction, we will write a critique and a kind of debunking of this article and show why it's flawed and why it doesn't even make sense, and um, draws on false arguments, misquotes sources again, and should overall be rejected as really horrible scholarship. And that's what we did in the introduction. But this also raises the question: um, if we only publish in Global South journals, which we did in our special issue, which also Professor Alatas often does, that he organizes issues in the Global South, then of course we have an opportunity for South-South dialogue, but the danger is that the Global North is not listening to us and is not reading us. And due to the very toxic policies that are being made in the Global North and the very heavy coloniality of knowledge that exists therein, how do we best tackle that without selling our soul to neoliberal, racist, imperialist journals or other institutions? That because a lot of Global North institutions have this baggage. So this is also really a point of discussion where I hope to learn from all of you. With that being said, I would like to open to the authors to very briefly respond to each other, share their ideas, maybe 3 to 4 minutes, and then I would like to open the floor for questions or sharings from the audience. You can already start to write questions or sharings in the chat also if you want. Dr. Fatima, would you like to go first?
Okay, so I was just basically energized by the responses I received. I'm glad that this project was making sense to my fellow panelists. And so this idea again, one of the challenges Again, one of the power we have is that most of the people, again, the people of conscious, we are the global majority. And again, if we can just change the space of knowledge sharing and make it more in alignment with our tradition, I think we can do this effectively, but it has to be done in an organized way. And again, the challenge is connecting with each other and building spaces where we stay connected in some way. In the last meeting we had, I really liked, I discussed that with Caroline as well, the idea of Professor Alatas that we should have a transnational student network as well. If we can build such networks, we really don't have to engage with or just get acknowledgement from the global north. Or again, we can always get into a dialogue with them. It's not that that this distinction is very sharp, but then instead of worrying about getting recognition in the global north, I think that is no longer necessary, as long as we can work to build and expand spaces where we can say what we have to say. But again, it is a challenging task. But if so many of us, through forums like this, if we can connect and talk about all these things, this is actively dismantling a lot of things and a lot of logics. So if we can have more of this in a more organized way, which again, through one forum that I have, I'll try to do. And again, I remain thankful for all the energy I get from the people and all these people who are here. So I again plan to continue that, and I would love to invite everyone. It's an open forum. So I look forward that we build networks which are actually going to change things. And we don't spend so much energy on getting recognized in the global north.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fatima. Can I next call on Professor Shadid Khan?
Well, thank you very much once again. And I would totally endorse what Dr. Fatma said. And we need greater degree of collaboration, because here and there people are continually, there is this discontentment which is fast spreading. And very rightly, Dr. Fatma, when she started her talk today and the introduction, the things that we have seen in the recent unjust war against Iran, and the level of aggression that we have earlier seen against the people of Gaza, I think a lot has changed, and there is never before perhaps this kind of dissatisfaction manifested itself that we are seeing now with entrenched structures and institutionalized knowledge formations. So I think a lot has happened. So we need to carry it forward. And at times when we are together, some of us, we get embroiled in other matters and we not forget, but then we feel that other things have taken over, that sort of vita activa, which pushes it all along. So then such fora become vita contemplativa for us, that we can contemplate, reflect, and adjust the sails, and then get back to the crucial business that we have to do. And in that context, my full support to this endeavor to have a transnational solidarity of students where they can debate, because getting credible information out there is very important. And then trying to sort of this infatuation that our institutions create with Western knowledge systems and Western publications, I think we need to dismantle that, and this is the way forward. And if not physically, still we can come together online and we can discuss and debate, and we can exchange notes and things that we are doing on ground, and connecting pluriversally with other scholars from all over the world. I think that is the way forward.
Thank you so much for this. Can I next call on Firoze Alam?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to quickly touch on a point Justin mentioned about the idea of sovereignty. So I think it's important to now to understand that the notion of sovereignty in 2026, how many variables, factors that are affecting, our sovereignty, because I think our notion of sovereignty got so badly embroiled with the Westphalian notion of sovereignty, which recognizes only one sovereignty and rejects all other kinds of sovereignty, where all forms of life has their sovereignty. And if we go to the relational model of living, I would very much to join Dr. Fatima Sajjad's effort of the ways of collaborating. I have organized more than 200 video podcasts on social justice conversations, where I had the opportunity of engaging with world-renowned scholars like Chomsky to Judith Butler to scholars from well-renowned institutions. But what I found very, very interesting, very, very fascinating, that when I engaged with conversations with people who are not anywhere close in academia, who are literally educating the minds of people on the street. And when they came into conversation, somebody who is working on the streets of New York, somebody who is on a envoy, trying to go to Gaza, somebody who is working in the Rohingya refugee camp. And from there, something that I learned that is incredibly empowering, which is very much well known in the Islamic knowledge tradition, which is called Izaza. So basically, if we organize decolonial dialogue in a way where we can engage with people from all different walks of life, where we learn to come together and share each other's opinion, hold space, and this way we learn to give each other the love and respect and recognition that will probably make us feel that we don't need we don't need to supplicate to the master's feet that please give us recognition. That could be a very potential way to what Dr. Fatima Sajjad mentioned about the pluriversity. And I think that the Western notion of university is very skewed, very biased, and very, very self-serving. And instead of building relationship, what it does epistemic extraction at the expense of the participants. So, we go in, collect data, write paper, get our, credential, that's all right. But do we get into relationality? In that process, I think two things happen. We forsake our own humanity, and we forsake the humanity of people that we interact with. And we forget that we are relational beings, and we go into the paradigm, the trap of Western academic rationality. So I would invite all of us to find ways to come together and have a conversation, and as much as possible. It doesn't have to be a paper. It can be a poem. It can be a song. It can be just a conversation between two fellow decolonial souls. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Firoza, for these very important sharings. Next, I want to call on Justin. Everyone who is speaking, please do go on camera. The internet is not fully stable, but I think the internet can handle a few speakers, and we want to see each other's faces and get a feeling for each other, make friends. So please, Justin, please.
All right. First, I guess to respond to Dr. Fatima, with the notion of building a transnational network of scholars and everything, I think that's really, really useful, in particular with regard to global South to South exchanges. When Caroline and I worked on mapping the Philippine education system and its recent turn towards globalization, we saw how, when you look at the international agreements that universities have here in the Philippines, the vast majority, right, of them were with global North institutions, because obviously they were tracing the scientometric regime and the prestige that comes with allying with these global north institutions, right? In these partnerships, for the vast majority, I think it was in the institutions with solid partnerships with global south institutions were in the single digits. The relationship really is one of the patron and the client, right? Someone that's close to the imperial center that can give you access, and someone who literally fulfills the framework of academic dependency, giving the foreign scholars somewhere that will, keep the researchers when they need far off fields to exoticize research about us. Um, I think it's a wonderful idea to build these networks where the power dynamic isn't like that, where we are really talking and we are really engaging to be able to, discuss issues that are true not just for the Philippines, for example, but for all of the countries, right, in the global south that are particularly oriented towards our needs. I'm currently working on the disinformation contexts in the global south. So a lot of the information disorder frameworks, for example, have mainly been ideas from global north universities telling us about all of these interventions to do here, in the Philippines, for example. But they fail to recognize that we implemented these disinformation networks first. They tried it out here, and the context is vastly different, right? I think it would be much more fruitful to have this transnational alliance of scholars that are aware of the differences that come when, your people have barely anything to eat because of imperialist plunder, and that's why they're becoming operators in the influence machine. To answer Dr. Feroz as well with regard to, the notions of the capitalist remodeling of how we do academic work, right? Of accepting the neoliberal universities configurations of academic work. Um, I Well, this is actually really, really obvious, among many of my peers. As a young researcher, as someone who's concerned about whether I can get a tenure track job and I can, stay in the academe. I am also subject to the same pressures of churning out publications for the sake of, entering the job market with a solid CV. And obviously, though I think my principles as a decolonial scholar won't allow me, of course, I'm tempted by the possibility of just doing easy scholarship that isn't too critical in order to get myself in the journals that will get me hired. A lot of my peers are doing this as well, are trying to negotiate the tension between their own principles, their understanding that the system overall is fucked up, with the practicality that without a position of tenure, it's pretty hard to assert your to chart your own academic path and to carve, to stir the Philippine conversation on decolonial scholarship. So I think it's great that we have spaces like this, spaces that actively try to resist the temptations of such an academe in order to, as another scholar mentioned, her name is blanking right now, to build communities of epistemic resistance, right? Or to where we can build strength together, and in so doing, right, become more ready to face an academe where we aren't exactly, afforded, where basically everything we do is an uphill battle. The ability to discuss it with scholars here, to test our theories with people who understand, and people who can also tell us about, what it's like to go out there, right? Who have been a bit more successful than people like me. Um, is Yeah, I'm really grateful for it, and I hope we are able to create more spaces for that moving forward. So yeah, I guess I wanted to end on that point.
Thank you so much, Justin, for these very important sharings. We will now open the floor for Q&A, sharings from the audience. We're lucky that a few experts on intellectual imperialism, academic dependency have joined us today. whom we didn't know yet or weren't aware of their work when he put together the special issue, but we're glad that they are here now. Professor Alatas is also here. Again, he is an author in this special issue, and he wasn't sure about his schedule, but last minute his schedule cleared up and he could attend, which is great. So anyone who would like to share something or ask a question, please raise your hand, or you can also write in the chat. After the Q&A, we will have a short break, then we will go to our second panel, which is much more also on the political economy aspect, power structure aspect, policy making, which I'm looking forward to very much. But do we have any responses from the audience? Questions, thoughts? Yes, Professor Albuquerque.
First of all, thank you for this invitation. It's a great pleasure to be in contact with colleagues from Asia and Africa, I guess. And I am Afonso de Albuquerque. I am a professor at Fluminense Federal University, Niterói, Brazil. And in my university, I am the leader of a nationwide project called National Institute for Science and Technology. It's the general name, Informational Disputes and Sovereignty. And one of the main goals of our project is challenging the imperialistic international order by fostering centers of knowledge outside the West. So we are trying to do that, and we belong to a different universe of yours, because there is also a strong Latin American debate on this issue. And I think being here is an opportunity to exchange ideas and maybe making our networks closer than before. I have already explored some contacts in Asia. Last year I have been in Indonesia for exchanging ideas with professors at Semarang University. I have been in China. My student of mine have been in Turkey in a meeting between Islamic and Latin American cultures. So I think that how I see it, we are in a time where the West is in a process of decline, I guess, economic decline, and especially moral decline in a certain way. When we look at genocide in Gaza and attack in Iran and the reaction of the West, shameful. The shameful reaction is perceived everywhere else. And so I believe this is an opportunity for challenging the Western dominance. And so I think that this meeting and other meetings like this can provide us with that opportunity. I am very I'm very happy to be here, and I am in the next months. I believe I will publish an article in the Communication Theory Journal. It's how the Anglophone scholars captured the cultural imperialism debate and erased its Latin American roots. And it's close to be accepted, I guess. So I believe this can be an opportunity to exchange ideas. The Latin America has a peculiarity because there is a large region in which I can speak Portuguese and the other people can speak Spanish, and we are able to understand each other. So we can communicate each other with in a language other than English. And this creates some opportunities for thinking outside the Anglophone box. And I believe that it's a real pleasure. I will read all the articles in this issue. I am very interested in knowing the other perspectives, and then thank you all for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, and we're really happy to connect with you. Do we have other questions, sharings, or thoughts from the audience?
Yes, thank you very much, Caroline, for organizing this. I'm really happy as usual for listening to all the conversations we are having here. I wanted just to share an experience I had last year when I presented a paper on the dynamics that are happening in West Africa after the military takeover. So after the conference, we were asked to provide our papers to be published. But when I wrote the paper and sent it for the first check, the person who is organizing it, he said, no, we cannot accept this paper. This paper is not an academic paper, is not objective. It is trial against France. And I have to completely rethink the way I am writing. So I'm still like thinking of how can we not be able to write the way we think and think from where we are, because the perspective I have taken in the paper, it is a very critical one, and I know that I may experience those kind of epistemic violence, and I'm still thinking of what to do actually, because it struck me a lot, and I really want to find an alternative way of publishing my work. So that's why I very much like the idea by Dr. Fatima, so that we have really alternative spaces and where we can really send safely our papers. I mean, especially nowadays, if you take a very critical perspective, it is usually not easy to get published. So that's why really I wanted to express my full support in any kind of initiative which will help early career student, early career researcher really to engage with the dismantling of the ongoing manifestation of coloniality in our societies. So I'm really happy about it, and I'm really looking forward for the next conference.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think this idea that scholarship must be objective is really a way of white supremacy and imperialism to gatekeep, because of course the oppressed are angry. The oppressed want social change. So who is the ones who are being objective? It's the ones who are benefiting from the power system, because they are the ones who created this power structure. They have the space to be objective, or to just write without emotion and write without anger and without demands for social change. So yeah, we can continue dismantling that. And I think Fatima has a great initiative to publish these kinds of experiences. And I'm also happy to announce that together with Fatima, we'll be doing online South to South dialogue conference in mid-August, where you're also most welcome to share your experiences and do more unconventional work. We did a conference already in November 2024, where we tried to connect across the continents, and we will do something similar again. Firoze, please.
I just wanted to mention about of a project that I saw at University of Guelph, where what they do, they actually collect stories, rural stories. It doesn't have to be at all written in the academic format that we are used to, but as long as the stories that are lived by people, it can be in the format of a song, it can be in the format of a poem, or just an oral interview through it can be audible, it can be just a video, and then I felt that's such a powerful way to respect the stories of people that are lived, and also breaking that stereotype that everything has to be written in one-dimensional linear ways of writing what is proclaimed to be the objective writing.
Thank you so much, Firoze. Do we have other sharings or questions from anyone in the audience?
May I say something? I
Yes,
don't know.
please.
I don't know how to put my hand up in digitally wise. I'm Munira. I'm a retired academic, but I'm not tired again. I'm actually invigorated after retiring. I have a question. I forget who mentioned it. I think it was Shazeb, about decolonizing the armed forces. How does one do that, and why would one do that? And also, what are the dynamics to dismantle in an armed forces? So I've been hearing this actually. I just don't know how to operationalize it. What are we referring to as a colonial problem that has affected our armed forces? So, power dynamics. What are the cultural biases you were referring to in an independent, in the post-colonial or rather neo-colonial situation today? So, okay, that's one question. The other, about language. Now, I had my career in the National University of Malaysia. All the classes were taught in the Malay language, not English. Yet, we do not have this thinking of decolonizing ourselves. In the university, it's not happening. It's happening outside. Some students, some academics who are interested in decolonial thinking are doing it outside of the university. So what is the connection? What are we missing? We are starting this conversation for the last 10 years, I would say, but it hasn't picked up in terms of actual change on campus. For instance, as a group, what we are advocating and the special issue that has been published now, what is the conversation we are taking part in about dismantling the global ranking system or the journals, how the journals are classified? Is there a conversation? Is there actual empirical work being done and attempts to dismantle this? Because we all know what the problems are, but what are the steps we are taking? So, I myself, I'm currently writing a book which, it has not been done in Malaysia yet, but it's a decolonial critique of the university, of the public university system. And ranking has contributed to a lot of the problems that we are facing. But what are the concrete steps that us as scholars thinking about these problems, what are we doing And is it realistic to dismantle? Or are we caught in this capitalist game? So, I mean, these are questions that have to be asked because it comes down to doing the nitty-gritty of the dismantling. And I don't know what they are yet. And we need to talk about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I also want to say a few things, but Professor Shadzib, do you want to go first?
Well, I would only like to respond to so that others may take up the next two questions. The first one that Professor mentioned or asked regarding decolonizing the military. I have two things in mind. One is that there is a particular, I don't know, regiment or a brigade of the Pakistani military. Now, on their uniform, they have a band or a circular ribbon on their collar. And they say, well, this particular ribbon reminds us of a particular military personnel who stuck his head inside a closing door of a castle. So that this particular unit, or perhaps it was a unit, that it attacked a castle in the northwest of Pakistan. And the people who were in that castle, they tried to close the castle door. And yet this soldier from this unit, he stuck his head inside the gate and they were unable to close the gate. Although the head of that soldier was crushed, but still the unit managed to get inside the castle and, of course, conquer it. Now they still cherish it, and it has become part of their uniform. But the point is that the unit was of the British Army, and its onslaught or its attack was on a castle of natives who were living in their own area. And this was the army that was, of course, proceeding against them. Now, the point is that now it is, of course, we celebrate that we got our independence from the British, but we still continue to cherish that legacy of the colonial army. Now, I feel, now this is one example. Now, my idea is, of course, although I do not publicly talk about decolonizing the military, I'm also in an administrative role now at Punjab University as Director of Student Affairs. So I would rather take it more tactfully. And to me, the tact is the strategy that has been adopted by Dr. Fatima, because she supervised the thesis of a Navy admiral, and she supervised his work, and he's now a good friend, and we discuss, although he's retired from the Navy, he was perhaps a Commodore or a Rear Admiral, and he wrote his thesis on decolonizing international relations. So I think that if there are I believe that we need to take that route because there can be no shortcut. To me, the National Defense University that we have in Pakistan, so far I haven't gotten the chance to deliver a lecture over there. And then we have the Pakistan Military Academy, and there are these military training schools. To me, I think that the best route is academic, that we get the scholarship out there and we sort of try to interact with military officers and they themselves read this scholarship and then they decide for themselves instead of me encouraging my students to agitate against the military and go out at a particular square and then from there raise these slogans against the army that you need to decolonize. Now, that is, of course, more hazardous and nothing comes out of it. only I would say that things move not in the right direction. I mean, the point is, to me, military officers are part of our society. They get their education from our educational institutions. And that is a much better method of my sister, younger sister, she works for the Navy as well. She's a naval officer. And then I think if Dr. Fatma allows me, I think that her father was also a military officer, perhaps a doctor. So to me, this we need to bring them into the discursive space where they read and then they decide for themselves what sort of decolonization is required, and in terms of semiotics, in terms of symbolism. But then I think more important than that is understanding the civilian perspective, understanding and respecting institutions of democracy, and not just capitalist democracy, a parliament which is sort of peopled by those who have exploited resources of the country, and they are there deciding about the fate of the country. So I'm not talking about that kind of democracy, but a genuine democracy. So to me, it is a discursive sort of struggle. And that's how we move ahead and try to impress upon them the need for decolonizing all institutions, and not just the university, but other institutions beyond the university. So that's my take on it.